two, one. Here we go. Mr. Mason, Philip, welcome back. I believe this is our second meeting, correct? Second or
Yeah,
third?
second or third time I think it's been
Second or
now.
third.
So
I
it's
think
been
it's been
great.
great. Yeah, man. We got to go back and do the and do a remix on the paperboy stories for
Yeah.
the
Yeah, those are good memories. Can't leave those out.
yeah, man. There are some nice nuggets there too that I definitely want to reminisce on. But today, some of the things in our previous discussions, one of the things stood out to me was financial how financial education is passed down from one generation to the next, and how your family dealt with it. I found that profoundly inspiring and interesting. I want to dive into that today. But before we begin, just again let the audience know a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Philip Mason. I have a nonprofit called Incredible Fathers. You can check us out on YouTube at Incredible Fathers. I also do another podcast called The Philip Mason Show. You can just go on YouTube at The Philip Mason Show, where I talk about education. It kind of ties in really nicely with what we're going to talk about today, where you know, good families, good parents, they will train and teach their children. And that's really important to passing on a legacy and passing on a tradition that's really meaningful and powerful and virtuous for the rising generation. So you're welcome to check out uh, me on YouTube at Incredible Fathers or at The Philip Mason Show. Um, I I came from a family of seven. Growing up, I had really awesome parents. I really owe a lot to them, and I just really was inspired by them. And so, my wife and I kind of follow in the pattern of my parents and her parents as well. We have seven of our own children, and it's been a wonderful journey. Two of them are already left home and on their own, and we still have five at home. So life is still a lot of high energy, a lot of excitement around the house. Um, but I've been an entrepreneur for a long time and heavily involved in my church here locally and also in the education field as a teacher. So I've done a lot of different things. So that's a little bit about me.
Um, with regards to your entrepreneurship and how you manage money, um, how does an entrepreneur maintain keep his head above water?
I'm sorry, I missed that last little part. What was that last part of the question?
How's an entrepreneur keep his head above water? In other words, how do entrepreneurs have ups and downs? Let me add some context.
Yeah,
As
so
an
that's
entrepreneur, you have ups and downs. How does one not go bankrupt? How does one keep financial balance
yeah.
as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and there's actually multiple answers to this question. So really, the best way to do things, if you're, sometimes people inherit money or they have resources because of their family situation, or you know, maybe they inherited a large sum of money and they have money to spend on a business. I know people like that. In fact, I worked for a gentleman whose father had done really well in business, and so he had a lot of extra money on hand because of his father's success in business. And so he went and started another business and grew it to about 50 million, did really well with it. Still operating today. Very successful. So sometimes you have situations like that, but for most of us, we don't come from money. We don't have extra money laying around. So in that case, the best thing to do is really take time to develop a skill set. That might include going to school or trade school or just self study and developing that skill set. At the same time, you have to, seek employment that provides well for your needs, and if you can, start saving money up for that time when you launch and go, and go on your own. So a lot of people, very wisely, they'll go into that field that they pretend that they intend on starting their business in. So they'll get a lot of experience in it, whether it's landscaping or AI or um, you know insurance consultancy, whatever it is, they'll work in that field before they launch their own um, enterprise, which is wise. You want to get the experience, you want to get familiar with the industry, you want to have source of income, get some savings built up. That's the ideal way of doing it. You probably heard the term bootstrapping. A lot of entrepreneurs are known for just jumping in and getting it done. unfortunately, there's just a really small number that actually pull through and survive that. So, um, but those that do, um, typically the way they survive it is by moving really quickly, and they adapt really fast to the environment, and they're very careful with their startup costs. So they're just on a shoestring budget, and they purposely only go to the very most essential items of their business. So to give you an idea of this, with larger companies where they have, um, they may spin off a startup and start with a new idea, or you have an entrepreneur who's just coming into the field. If they have investment money from an investment firm, it's really common for these investment firms to, they'll get some nice office space, they'll buy some nice furniture, they'll buy some nice technology for everyone. They'll buy some software, enterprise software systems, and they'll drop a lot of cash right out of the gate. Um, and really, a lot of it isn't necessarily tied to the profitability of the business. And so, a lot of startups actually that get a lot of money from investment firms, a lot of them actually struggle because they're not focused on the key items that turn to profitability in that business. Now, oftentimes, investment firms will put certain stipulations in place to make sure that the money's spent wisely, but not always. And so that can be the case. So watching your profitability, only spending money on what's absolutely essential, and just focusing on the bare bones. The key thing to getting a business going is just customers. Like if you have customers, then you have a business. A lot of people get a legal entity, they get it built up, they do everything that makes it look like a business, but then they don't have any customers, so it's technically not a business until you get that first customer.
Right. Yeah. I'm an entrepreneur by trade at this point, I guess I could say, and that's one of the things now I have staff of people. One thing I tell them is we don't. It's like the main thing is sales. It's like if we have no customers, doesn't matter whether we have a website, doesn't matter whether we have.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how well I promote myself. If there is no type of funnel to acquire customers, we don't have much anything. So let's focus on the customers first and make sure that we deal with everything else second. So yeah, I understand that completely. Um, I hear two prongs of entrepreneurship, two prongs of entering into entrepreneurship a little bit. One in which you enter in with a certain financial base. You got something saved up, you've got an acquired skill, and another whereas you describe bootstrapping. Which which one did you? How did you enter into the entrepreneurial space?
So I've actually done both ways. So I'm speaking from experience here. So I've done it the wrong way and I've done it the right way. So
Nice.
um, I've just jumped in and started with businesses. Now I will tell you that the type of business you start can be an indicator of how well you'll do. So there's some businesses that are just proven. So they already exist. They're already out there. It's a known factor that people are going to buy. They're going to purchase. So, for example, I started. This is going way back. I started a window cleaning and pressure washing business in Southern Oregon, and it's very simple. It's a service, and you're kind of looking for a wealthy clientele who have extra money to spend on some of those services. I actually have a friend here locally that he has kind of a handyman business, and he does power washing, no window cleaning, but power washing. And it's just kind of a known factor. You're going to find people that want those services. You're going to be able to turn some revenue. In fact, when I went to my tax guy at tax time, he's like, so how's this business doing? And I told him the amount, and he's like, oh wow, okay. He wasn't expecting someone to make that kind of money off of window washing, but you can do pretty well with it. You're not going to get like crazy rich or anything,
Mm,
but you're going to bring in a solid income.
mm,
Um, and so choosing the right kind of business can be important. If you're going to do like a product business, you're going to start importing products from China or Vietnam. There's a lot more involved with that. There's a lot more capital involved with that, and there's a lot more moving parts than just going out, knocking on someone's door, and seeing if they want their driveway pressure washed. So that can be a factor as well too. But um, I mean, the ideal way is to, as you're growing up as a youth, is to, study, find out what you're interested in, what you're really good at, your talents and what your talents and skills are,
Mhm.
and then just develop those and just spend your whole life developing that and eventually work in that field. And then at some point break off and start your own business. Usually, um, 5 to 15 years in that time frame is when most people kind of break off. They've kind of mastered their field, and then they're going to go off and they've got some capital saved up, or they've got, some credit at the bank. They're going to jump in and start working it. And I usually recommend not going to debt to start a business. It's hard enough starting a business, but then to have debt on top of it, it makes the business so much harder to start. So I've done it with debt, and it's very hard. You're always playing catch up. So I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Um, you know, let's say you talk about the best way to enter into the industry is like our build especially if you're young, is try to build up a skill set and to leverage off that skill set. What if I'm older, I haven't quite figured out life, and I'm trying to create a new start, and I really want to get into entrepreneurship. Let's say I'm like 35 years old. I'm in the second, almost third season of my life, and I'm trying to make a shift in entrepreneurship. What do you think would be the best avenue into entrepreneurship from from that position?
Yeah, I think that's a great, fantastic question. So I had an experience. I was actually in college, and I was going into the cafeteria. It was like lunchtime or something, and I walked in and sat down. And there was this guy in a pilot's uniform, like an airline pilot's uniform. He was sitting there with his lunch tray eating lunch. I thought, he's not a student. I wonder what he's doing here. So I actually got my lunch. I went down and sat next to him and asked if I could sit with him and talk with him. So it turns out this guy was an accountant. He'd actually gone to this school, had graduated a long time before, had been an accountant. They had a whole career as accountant. He kind of got bored with accounting,
Mm.
and he decided, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing this. And he'd been successful up to that point. But he decided, what, I really like aviation. And so he's like, I'm going to go get my pilot's license. And so that's what he did, which was a big turn. It was a big sacrifice, but he started a new career, and he was now flying for a regional airline, kind of getting some miles racked up. So I was kind of talking about his career transition. And it was interesting. He just looked at me and he said, you know what? People get stuck in ruts all the time. If you're stuck in a rut, you got to get out of it.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's never too late to change. And he says, you can change your career at any time. He says, we have the freedom to do that here in America. And it's a beautiful thing. And so that to me, that was like really super inspiring. And I think people who are older in life, who maybe have already been through several jobs or different career options, like, don't be discouraged. Like, don't give up. There's still, uh, man, our economy, our technology is changing so rapidly. There's so many opportunities. I think there's more opportunities now than there have ever been before. Sometimes we have to have eyes to see them and ears to hear them, to recognize what they are, and then position ourselves to receive them. But um, don't get discouraged. And I think a lot of people, what they miss is, like, that we have so much information available to us. We have to be able to discern what skills are actually going to be valued, 5 or 10 years down the road, and then start studying those and put them into practice. So, for example, something that's been happening right now in America is, um, coding is, for the last couple of decades, people have been pushing coding, like, you got to get into coding, got to get into coding. But like, what's happening right now in our society?
Yeah.
Well, AI, we've developed technology that does the coding now. So this position, being a coder, is obsolete. I have friends, they make really good incomes. They make really nice, handsome, six-figure incomes coding. But it's kind of interesting. A lot of them are having difficulty getting a job or staying in a job because AI is starting to take over a lot of what they do, or they're using AI to do a lot of what they do,
Right.
just because it's so much quicker, so much more efficient. So you have to be aware of what's going on in the environment before you just jump in and do something. Like, I'll give you one more example of this. So, like, um, for example, real estate agents, they provide a very valuable service to their clients, but technology and the amount of information that's available is actually replacing real estate agents right now. So unless you have a very specific angle on how you help people invest or you provide other services that they're not able to provide for themselves, you're going to struggle as a real estate agent because most people can go out there and gather the same information that you can. Um, so it's one of those occupations that's becoming more difficult because of all the information that's out there.
Yeah, no, while you were talking, I was thinking, I'll throw it out there as a question. What do you think? I was thinking of if I was to start from scratch, if I had to start from scratch, how would I, and let's say I had zero skills, I didn't have any skills, but I had to start from scratch at this point. I'm 46 years old. And if I had to start from scratch, how would I get, and I didn't have any education, how, coming into it, how would and I want to go in entrepreneurship, what would be that best avenue to go in entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So if you want to move quickly, the very best thing that I've seen is when people actually go get a mentor. So you find someone who has done what you want to do, and sometimes you have to network your way to find someone like this. Sometimes you may already have someone in your sphere of influence that you can connect with. Maybe it's someone at church, maybe it's someone at a previous work environment. But even local universities have like business commerce or there's usually local government funds that are used at local universities to be able to help people have the information to be able to launch a business. So I would recommend, finding a mentor. That could be joining a club. For example, I got into real estate and I joined a real estate club, and that was super helpful. And we had people in that club that were just getting started, all the way up to people that were doing, uh, you know, tens of millions of dollars in a single real estate deal. And so it was a huge spectrum. And the people at the top were very gracious with their time and their insights to help people in the middle and the bottom stratas who were just getting started. But my knowledge in real estate like skyrocketed when I joined that club, and I just got involved, and it helped a lot. So going to like a local university, like I've got a university not too far from here, and they have like a little think tank where you can go and you can get market research on the area that you want to go into, and they can help you pull it up and review it and say, hey, is this an area that I want to go into business? So for example, I have one friend, he went into kind of, I guess it'd be fire and water restoration business. And he wanted to know if this was a good business to went into. So he actually went down to our local university's commerce. I forget the name of what it's called off the top of my head, but they have a fancy title for it. But the commerce department there at the local public university, the University of Arkansas, which is close to where I'm at. And he went down there, and they helped him pull all the data for their area, how many other restorationist specialists there were, and he found out that that market was actually underserved. So it gave him great confidence to invest money, take some of his hard-earned money, and like buy all the equipment that he needed, which was close to, I think, to get started. I mean, it's like at least $500,000 to $1 million. So yeah, the equipment's very expensive. So, but it gave him confidence to say, okay, there's a market here. People need this service. I'm just going to jump in and do it. Like, I know it's going to be a win because the business is there. People need this service. So that's what I would recommend.
Are there specific industries that you think would be like go-tos to jump into? Though, like, let's say I wasn't concerned about purpose and I just wanted to make the almighty dollar and I just wanted to create independence. But maybe I would be willing to take the time to develop a skill over a year or two. What would be some industries you think would be in this modern era that would be like bulletproof?
Um, yeah, and there are some bulletproof ones for sure, but I think we always have to acknowledge that things change and develop. And so if you just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and you're forward thinking and saying, okay, so how might technology change in the future where it might change the way I have to approach my business? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. One thing that I'm seeing right now that a lot of people are doing is they're using AI to gather um, data on, for example, all these service businesses across America, and they'll actually um, they'll come up with marketing plans for social media or for YouTube or whatever, and help those small local service businesses be able to have a good marketing program. And I see a lot of people doing that right now. Um,
So that's a trend.
and
That's a trend there. Okay.
yeah, so it's got what's nice about it is you're kind of in a database business. So, and a lot of that data is open and available, and you don't have to spend a lot of money for it. Sometimes there's different AI programs that you'll purchase into, or people will create their own program out of AI. So, um, I actually have another friend who has been a very successful entrepreneur, and my son had an idea, and his idea was to do like a storage concierge service. So people would need help moving their stuff out of the house into storage. They would also organize it, categorize it, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and then send a link to them so they know where everything was stored in their storage, and everything had a tag to it. And you could use AI to help speed up this process a lot. And there were some other services that we were going to package in there as well too. But um, so in talking with this friend, he had another tool, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the tool was called. It'll come to me in a minute. But this tool basically allowed you could tell it how to design your website, and it could pull in data on how to market things, and data how to um, organize the business. So our business required a lot of different logistics, like people traveling, moving stuff, organizing things at different storage units. And so it would not only facilitate like a chart for logistics as far as like who's going to move what stuff when, kind of like a Uber model, but for doing it as for a concierge service for storage.
Okay.
And so AI kind of allows you to like build out a platform, build out a system electronically. Like you don't even have to code anymore. But this AI program can actually build out a website and a logistics platform on the back end to handle that. So, for example, if you hired a bunch of college students to help load moving trucks and jump it in the respective storage unit, and then categorize everything on the computer, and then the person automatically just goes to the app, and they can check where everything is in their storage, knows the exact location of it roughly, and can access it, and they can remember what's in their storage, and then if they want it, they can call you up and say, put a request, and hey, can you bring this to my house?
Mm.
And so AI can build out a whole system like that, build out an app, a website. It can build out a platform on the back end to facilitate college students who need a job, helping to move people's stuff around and organizing it.
Mm.
So I know that's kind of,
No,
it's kind of a new service idea, but you can use AI technology to build out a platform for that. It's there now. So if you can dream it up and think it up, AI can usually build a platform to help you accomplish it.
yeah,
So I've seen a lot of that going on right now.
yeah, there's a lot. That's such a broad. I don't know whether people are ready quite yet to approach the entrepreneurship and their careers with AI. I don't know whether people are ready because it's so broad and powerful, and you can do just about everything. That I would imagine a lot of people would result to nothing just because you know it's there's too much. There's too many broad applications. Do you know where I'm going with that? As far as
Yeah,
like
there could be a lot of hype around new technology. There always is.
right.
And so you have to look through the fluff a little bit. And I think probably the best advice for people, you know, that are trying to get started or they're recreating themselves is to think about like what you're already really good at,
Mhm.
and start there and just focus on that. And the question you ask yourself is like, how could this AI technology help me? Or is there an AI technology platform out there that has services that could aid me in what I want to do?
Yeah. When I think of jumping into entrepreneurship, there's probably my mind leans towards particular target areas like plumbing, electricians, construction, construction individuals. Like we're not in the age of robotics just yet, kind of. Like there's still a huge industry of skill based that you could acquire from getting a 2 year degree at like up here it's DMAC, Des Moines Area Technical College. Like I would imagine trade schools would be probably one of the secondary areas, is it called trade schools?
Yeah, trade schools. Yep.
Like I would imagine if you really wanted to get the most bang for your buck, outside of the use of AI technology and leaning on your talents and abilities, if you didn't know what your skills were, but you wanted to go into an industry, I'd imagine going into some like basic industries
Yeah.
through tech school that would be an easy entry point into entrepreneurship that doesn't require development of or excessive development of a skill, but just narrowing it into a niche that is extremely in demand, but not necessarily, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So trade schools is huge. So and culturally here in the United States, we've pushed bachelor's degrees to the ninth degree. So like everyone has to go to college. Like you're a loser if you don't go to college. Like that's been our culture here in America for decades now. And so now we're at the point where we have, I think the number is around between 7 and 8 million jobs that are not being fulfilled because we don't have the skill base here in America to fulfill those jobs. So we're talking about like welding jobs, we're talking about lineman jobs, we're talking about excavator operator jobs, we're talking about, all those things that require skills, electricians, plumbers, all your tradesmen, um, very important jobs to go into. And really we need people to realize that profession is noble, that being uh, in the trades is a very noble profession, and in the past I think it's really been frowned on, and I think we culturally we need to change that. And politicians always like to debate um, whether or not to push education the way they have pushed it in the past, I should say. But the reality is, like, we don't, if people want to know where we should go in our nation, we don't hardly manufacture anything anymore. But manufacturing is what made us a really powerful um, and prosperous and happy nation. So a lot of our crime problems in America, like if you look at like Los Angeles, for example, excuse me, during the 1940s, 1950s, we still had our factories.
Mm-hmm.
And even into the 1960s, we still had a lot of factories. And so um, a lot of people, especially like in that Southern California area, Los Angeles, there's tire factories. There was, basically anything you could think of to manufacture things. We basically made everything here in America. In the 60s and 70s, we got this idea like, oh, we can make more money by outsourcing to other countries with cheaper labor. And you know what? It's been our downfall in this country. It's totally been our downfall. We prospered for a few decades, but then it's come back to bite us. Now, China makes everything we make or we purchase. Our companies make it, I should say, but it's made over in China. But we don't make anything anymore. So if you want to start a business, um, and you've got resources, like getting into manufacturing is really important. Even small batch manufacturing that you can do in your garage is really important. And a lot of people are doing really well with that right now, where you have a skill, maybe it's woodworking or maybe it's steel fabrication or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just blowing up right now.
Yeah, I'd imagine that in combination with AI, in combination with creating being able to promote yourself, globally on an online marketplace would actually be extremely beneficial for somebody who's skilled at doing a specific thing or creating a specific product that they could do in their home. And then you got other supportive technology out there like 3D machines that are helping to essentially convert or allow the average consumer to have manufacturing capabilities in their home. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So the 3D printing is huge. I actually have another entrepreneur friend. His last name is Clausen, but he started Titan power, but he created basically an energy company. Batteries, lithium batteries, but he created a special new version of it that he engineered himself, and he got basically engineering software, CAD software,
Hmm.
and then he learned how to do 3D printing. He started creating his own prototypes, and eventually he started figuring things out. Now he's not making the actual insides of the batteries. He ships those in from other countries, but the casings and how they operate and how long the batteries last, like he's engineered some of that technology. He's done very well with his business, but it's because he took time to learn how to use a 3D print machine, and he learned how to use some of this software on his own, and he quit his day job, which they were really sad about. He worked for a major supplier for Walmart,
Okay.
and they were sad that he was leaving because he was such a good employee. But he's really good with the technical and engineering side of it. So if you lean that way, it can be a really great space to be in. And one other thing I'll just throw in there too, like, in the 1950s and 60s, when we got out of manufacturing here in America, that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of ghettos, um,
Mm.
and poor spots, I guess, spots of poverty
Yeah.
in a lot of our big cities, is because in those big cities like Chicago and LA, we used to have big factories there, and
Hmm.
people had jobs and they could take care of their family off of a factory job,
Right.
and people were happy. And when that collapsed and we sent those jobs over to factories overseas, that's when a lot of these inner city areas, families started deteriorating. There started to be government support, and we see families collapsing. Men had a hard time finding jobs, and so a lot of our big city ghettos are because of we took away manufacturing. So we need tradesmen. We need people with skills. Again,
Yeah. We were supposed to talk about how families transmit and educate the next generation towards financial wealth and financial stability. Well, we don't have enough time. I feel like I fret that if we go down that rabbit hole, um, we won't um, we won't do a thorough stretch of that. But I do like the nature of the conversation as it relates to entrepreneurship and starting from scratch. These type of conversations are beneficial to individuals who are maybe looking for some additional ideas on how to start from scratch and maybe go out there to the internet world and figure out how to create their own space within the internet world. I think this is a nice catalyst conversation for stuff like for someone in that position, I suppose. Um, who else might benefit from listening to this conversation? This is a nice conversation with with some nice nuggets, to of uh, broaden the scope of what going into entrepreneurship looks like, in this era, in this time, based off of what's out there. Um, yeah. Who do you think might benefit from this type of conversation? Let me throw that question out to you.
yeah, I think we live in a time, things are changing really rapidly, and I think really anyone can benefit from this because the technology is such that the barrier to entry is starting to become so low. There's so much available information, and there's such a variety of things that we want, as humans, that there is, they call it the long tail of the curve. So with the internet, it's kind of changed things. So you can find an audience on the internet because there's literally billions of people on the internet. So you're going to find your own set of nerds, so to speak, that like to do what you do or what's important to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything important even. It could just be entertainment. It could be something for fun. But if you have enough people that like doing what you do, you could make a hobby business out of it.
Yeah.
So that's one thought. Um, but I think for most people, like if you use the internet, and you're communicating, some information, and sharing that information can be really powerful. And oftentimes people are willing to pay money for that. So being in the information space and then being able to have products online that people can purchase that help them, whether it's starting their own business or whether it's solving personal mental health problems or whatever it is, that can be a source of reoccurring wealth that can occur for a long period of time. Um, and for most people, that's the closest thing they're going to get to reoccurring semi-passive income, and they can build up what we call generational wealth with that, meaning that they're no longer dependent on a month-to-month paycheck, and they can save and invest, and that they can transfer that wealth to the next generation. I'm seeing a lot of people who are information entrepreneurs, and they're becoming very wealthy because of their expertise in their field. They're becoming mentors and coaches for the rest of the world. So that's another aspect where I'm seeing a lot of growth, where there's this huge network of people that are coming together to become experts in their field through the internet. And what they're paying money for is for the exchange of ideas and information and skills, how to develop skills and actual a personal transformation. So that's another way I'm seeing this happen in a lot of ways. So traditional schools are actually being replaced by what is happening on platforms like YouTube or social media, because of people like you and me, actually, who are realize, hey, I've got a really important message. People need to hear this. They're gonna become more wealthy in various aspects of their life if they can use what I have to share with them.
Let me reframe the question a little bit, just to
Yeah, sure.
narrow it down to a more specific kind of output. What type of person you think would benefit from this conversation that we're having right now, that we've already had so far, with regards to entrepreneurship and different entry points in entrepreneurship, mainly from your perspective, Philip? Who do you think that benefits? You know, what type of archetype? You know what I mean?
Yes. I really think, regardless of like your demographic or your background or anything like that, I think there's always going to be a core section of people who are entrepreneurs, and it it may really only be like 20 or 30% of any given demographic, and but we need more entrepreneurs. We need more people to be inventive and imaginative, and um, I think being able to create wealth, the best way to create wealth is through the entrepreneur path that I've seen. Um, you can get wealthy through employment and having an employer, but it's a very long term game. With entrepreneurship, it can happen much faster, and you can spend your life and focus it on other areas. I'm not am I targeting what you're wanting? I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I'm getting
Yeah.
there, but
Let me ask you a follow up question to it. As a last question here, because I know we got to get up out of here. What would you say to that young or older entrepreneur that's trying to jump into the entrepreneurial economy? What advice? What's one piece of advice that you would give that individual that you think would help them, encourage them to step out there into the entrepreneurial space? Let's say they're undecided and they're not sure whether they should step in the entrepreneur space. What's a word of wisdom or encouragement or profound piece of information that you think would help them in their decision making process? Tough question.
yeah. Uh, so I think the best way to do that is you actually run a test. Now this may sound nerdy or whatever, but like this is like everyone that I know that's really, whether they're young and they're lacking that inexperience or that talent to get going, or they're old and they're like, I don't know if I'm much good for anything anymore. I've done this in the past. I don't know if I can really make the transition to something else. The thing that I've noticed that's really separated people from people who get it done and the people who don't get it done is they actually run a test. Like something happens, oftentimes very deliberate. They'll try something, they'll build something, and then they'll share it with people. Um, whether it's a gene company where they're creating a new type of genes, and they'll go out and just hand out free genes and say, "Hey, wear these and tell me what you think about them, and what's good about them."
Okay.
Or if they're launching a new, um, type of food company or a new type of bread, they'll hand out samples, or they'll be at a fair or event, and they'll share, their cooking talent with people. These are just a couple examples. And then something happens where people are like, "Whoa, this is really good. I'd pay money for this." And and you realize that there's a market there, and you understand what the demographics of the market is because they've actually purchased some of your product. And so that gives you the confidence to say, okay, I can scale this up a little bit more, and it's worth putting a little more money into. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a sophisticated test or anything, but it has to be enough where you have people are excited about it and they say, yes, I'd be willing to pay money for this.
Yeah, that very much reminds me of a general philosophy that comes from a couple of individuals. Some of my favorite online individuals, like Alex Ramosi. I know you're familiar with him on the internet. He's huge out there. Gary Vanderchuck would probably say the same thing. Is, if you're going to go out there and do something, produce something, try to find ways to put it out there for free, up to a point where people actually want to pay for the service, rather than being concerned about getting an instant payment for services. Why not just put things out there for free to see how the market responds? And if you put enough of it out there, right now we're giving out free information, right? If you put out enough of it out there, then people will want to naturally buy your services, is their philosophical take, which I love, because because we're in the age of what I would consider transparency, not just information. We're past the information age. We're in the era of transparency. And that's my futuristic take on technology right now, particularly social media technology. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic. But
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, the more information you have, the more literal transparency there is, right?
right, yeah. So we're in the age of, the more you expose yourself, the more you create brand authenticity, and
Yep.
the more you build credibility, which is the primary motive of a lot of audience sex. Even me and you personally, right? We're here to present, some form of credibility and authenticity, and in doing so, then perhaps Nance, someone considers looking at our services a little bit more, looking at us differently, and perhaps Nance, they solicit us for things, or they continue to follow us and pay us with their attention, kind of ish. So yeah, that's a whole nother topic. We've
Yes.
probably we've got it, but we've got it probably about we got about we got at least 2 or 3 more interviews here, Philip. So don't get lost on me,
We got
man.
a lot to talk about.
um, I'm really trying to push my interviews out to an hour, so we'll talk about that. I think there's so much this, particularly for you in particular. I think you have such a wealth of perspective that I want to share that energy, if you don't mind. So maybe
Yeah,
next
no,
time.
absolutely. I love to share.
Yeah. So maybe next time, but for right now, we'll leave on that note there. Philip, thank you for your time. I know we're a little bit over here. Thank you for your time, your energy, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.